What's going on, everyone? Welcome to the Behavioral Arts, and this week begins one of the biggest trials in Hollywood history between Johnny Depp and Amber Heard. And there is a lot of really great body language lessons and a lot of great tells as to who's telling the truth, who's embellishing, who's holding back, and we're gonna look at all of that. Let's go. So Johnny Depp and Amber Heard got married in 2015, and a year later, this whole mess started where she filed for divorce, sued him for domestic violence. He sued her back for domestic violence, defamation. They've been going at each other since then. It's been years. I'm not going to go into all the details of the history of this. I will leave some links in the description if you guys want to know the background. But in this video, I'm going to focus on the behavior, what we're seeing when they talk about the situation. Let's begin with Amber Heard's deposition, where she's answering a bunch of questions about what transpired throughout the years. And there's a lot of great stuff here. Check it out.
Anytime prior to May 22nd, 2016, did you ever commit an act of domestic violence against Johnny Depp?
Calls for a legal conclusion and irrelevant, but go ahead.
Do you understand what I'm asking you?
No.
No?
Yes, I understand what you're asking.
Okay. And prior to May 21, 2016, or May 22, 2016, is it your testimony that you never committed any act of what would be considered domestic violence against Mr. Depp?
Calls for a legal conclusion and irrelevant to these proceedings.
I did my best to defend myself and not get seriously hurt or be a doormat to whom this happens to all the time.
So we see throughout this whole deposition, including right here, a lot of activity with the lips. We see the tongue moving like this. We see lip compressions, or the lips come together like this. And typically, these are all things that contribute to a cluster of deceptive behavior. Always remember, one thing can never indicate that someone's lying. We have to see multiple things happening at the same time. And these kinds of things usually contribute to that. But as we go on here, you're going to notice she's eating throughout this deposition. And you'll get my thoughts on that later. But that can explain a lot of this activity because there's food in her mouth. So I'm going to not give too much weight to all that activity in the lips. Now, the eyes, however, totally different story. When Amber Heard is being interviewed, and I don't just mean in this deposition, I mean even on other interviews, she has this thing that she does that when the other person is talking, her eyes just shift like this. They go from side to side like this, and it's very strange. I'm sure that some of you noticed looking at it going, what is she doing with her eyes? And there's a couple of reasons that somebody might have shifty eyes like this, and let's cover them all, and I'll tell you which one I think is most likely. The first reason you might see somebody's eyes shifting like this is someone who's very nervous and anxious, especially in social situations. But that typically is combined with other signs of nervousness. You know, fidgeting with the fingers like this, picking at their fingers, nail biting, a lot of rubbing the legs, rubbing the arms. This is someone who's uncomfortable. We're not seeing that much fidgeting with her, so I think it's unlikely that that's why her eyes do this. The second reason you might see shifty eyes like this is when in a crowd, someone is scanning all the different people in front of them to see if their story or what they're presenting is connecting. Whether it's deceptive or truthful, this is someone who's gauging the audience reaction. And we will see moments of that throughout the deposition, but in what we just saw, she's not looking at specific people, she's just staring off into the random distance. So that's not what it is either. The third reason you might see shifty eyes is accessing memory. So it's very likely that in this case, her lawyers gave her very strict instructions on how to handle certain questions and what to say and don't say this and do say that. So it's very likely that she's looking at what was I supposed to say here? She's thinking about it. And we often do this when we're thinking about or trying to access a specific memory. It's like we're searching the file cabinet. I do think that's part of what's happening, but I think the most likely reason as to why she does this thing with her eyes is reason number 4. The fourth reason is one that I'm very familiar with, and it's not because I studied criminal interrogation, it's not because of my degree in social psychology, it's because of the third part of my experience as an entertainer, as a mentalist who entertains people. Before I was on stages and TV shows, I used to do a lot of close-up, intimate cocktail parties or high-end events. Notice how very often, as her eyes shoot across, her mouth opens at the same time and it looks like this. I've seen this very often in high society people with a snobby or elitist attitude. And basically what it signals is, you're not important enough to hold my attention. It's dismissive and it's condescending. And I used to see this, it used to aggravate me so much when I was doing close-up entertainment and you have a group of people and they're all really into it and they're all like really following it, but you have this one person holding their drink or their hors d'oeuvre and they're kind of like looking around the room like this, like, there's more important things for me here, you're not important enough. It used to boil my blood. Now, I'm not saying she's trying to be condescending or dismissive. I just think that given who she is and the elite status that she has, she's developed this sort of attitude of like, you can't hold my attention. And you'll notice throughout this entire deposition, she very rarely gives the interrogator that attention and respect, and she's often just sort of looking around like, are we done here? Can I go yet? So that's what I think these shifty eyes are. Now, before I go on and point out more behaviors that show us where she's being deceptive, where she's being truthful, there's two things that are really important to keep in mind. The first one is something I know because of a researcher named Paul Ekman. Now, anyone who's ever watched the series Lie to Me should know about Paul Ekman because it's based on his work. He is the godfather of microexpressions and the author of many books, including Telling Lies, which is an incredible book all about the science of deception and what happens in the brain. And in this book, he talks about some research that he's done that shows us that when someone is telling the truth, but they fear that they're not being believed, they are going to show a lot of signs of deception. So throughout this entire analysis, please keep that in mind. I might see signs of deception, but it doesn't necessarily mean they're lying because it makes sense that in both cases, both Johnny Depp and Amber Heard have that fear of not being believed because they have another person with a great big social following who's calling them a liar. The second thing is, as my viewers know, it's important for me to reserve moral judgment. And in this case, that is particularly important because I don't want to be the guy who doesn't take this kind of thing seriously. I think this is a very serious accusation, and if they are being truthful, they absolutely deserve to be heard and they deserve justice. And if they're not being truthful, I think it's a very shameful thing because it takes away from people who are being truthful in cases like this. I'm going to be very careful to never say, this is a lie, this is the truth. I'm going to point out the behaviors that indicate what it might be, but I'm going to try to reserve judgment because I don't want to be the person who doesn't take this seriously. That being said, let's look at that answer right at the end where we're seeing some verbal stuff and some nonverbal stuff. The nonverbal is that arm shooting across like this, almost to where she rips the mic off her shirt, and it goes up here and we're seeing blocking and we're seeing this tense scratching. This is not the way we typically get an itch. Usually if you have an itch on your shoulder, it's a slow movement as your attention stays where it's supposed to be, and then it just sort of lowers naturally like this. It's rarely this shot like this, which is tense sort of like this, and it comes back. So around this question that she's being asked, have you ever physically attacked Johnny Depp? There is some defensiveness going on. We're seeing the arm come up and block what we call the ventral side, the front, which is very vulnerable. That's blocking. There's tension here. So does this mean it's deceptive, like she's defending from the question, or does it corroborate what she's about to say, which is that she did physically harm him, but it was in self-defense, and this is that defense coming up? Either one is possible. Let me know in the comments what you think. But let's listen at the words that she's using. It's entirely focused on defense, which obviously in a criminal case like this is a good defense. Her lawyers would have probably advised her to stick to that story, that anything she did was in self-defense. But we even see the way she says, well, there's a lot of hesitation as it's coming out. She's not getting deeply emotional as she's recalling this. It's not affecting her emotionally. It's very sort of surface level emotions. And she's saying, I didn't want to be a doormat to whom this happens all the time. So she's telegraphing here that it's important to her to stop the behavior from being a recurring thing. This is a very prideful comment. I didn't want to be a person to who this happens. That's not me. So we're getting a lot of defensiveness around this. That doesn't indicate truth or deception, just priorities.
Isn't it true that you had previously told Johnny Depp that you had hit him?
I'm going to object. It's a different question. It's vague and ambiguous, vague as to time.
Many times when we fought, well, not many times, he hit me for a very long time before I ever
I'm going to
picked up my
object as
arms.
non-responsive and move to strike.
Once again, a lot going on here. And one of the things that really stood out to me was her reaction to her lawyer's objection. If you go back to the first clip that I showed you guys, when her lawyer objected, she barely budged.
What would be considered domestic violence against Mr. Depp?
Calls for legal conclusion and irrelevant to these proceedings.
But in the second one, she turns her entire head like this, very enthusiastically, and she's happy about this objection. It's like, listen up, everyone, this is important. Then she comes back down here as he's talking, and she's sort of internalizing. When we go downwards like this with our eyes, with our energy, it's inner monologue. She's really trying to talk to herself and figure out, okay, what am I going to say here? Then she goes back to him like, okay, I'm not done coming up with an answer. This objection is really important. She's happy about this objection because she's not quite sure how to handle this question. And there's a lot more things corroborating that. One of them is the fact that with her body, she's doing something called turtling. Now, she was doing this earlier, but it's getting worse now. Turtling is when we become smaller. Just like a turtle withdraws into its shell, we become smaller because we want to draw less attention to ourselves. We take up less space. We do this when we're stressed and when we're insecure. We also see grief in her face. Remember when I talked about Denzel Washington 2 weeks ago, and we looked at the two places we look for grief, the chin over here and the lines up here that the inner corners of the eyes are causing. Now, hers don't dip the way they normally do. I think maybe she's had Botox, so it limits the action we see up here. Could be wrong about that, just a theory. But there's still activity up here and down here. So we're seeing a lot of insecurity, a lot of uncertainty, and when the answer finally does come out, it's a mess. We're getting a lot of what we call speech disfluency, which is stumbling on your words, a lot of verbal leaks, which is hesitation, a lot of what I call fluff, which is talking a lot without saying anything, and most importantly, non-answer statement. She doesn't answer the question that's being asked. She's not asked what the violent history is, how many times he hit her, how many times she hit him. She's being asked if she recalls saying or agreeing that she hit Johnny Depp. And she doesn't answer that, which is why the lawyer was asking the question, says, I'm going to strike that because she didn't answer it. I think that she has prepared answers in her head for specific questions, and this is an actress forgetting her lines. Because we see that sort of, oh good, my lawyer is saying something, I have time to think about the answer here. Wait, what was I supposed to say? And then she starts a script and she goes, no, wait, not that. She literally says, well, not many times, like strike that, that's not the right answer. And this, it looks exactly like an actress on set when they forget their lines and they're like, no, sorry. And then they're trying to figure out what the script is for this question. And at the end, she looks right back at her lawyer because she realizes she messed up, and this time she's looking at him for help. At the end of that statement, she goes right back to him like, that didn't go well. Okay, now it's about to get really emotional. We're gonna dive into some parts where she's clearly emotional about what she's saying, but what does it indicate about what she's actually feeling? But before we get to that, do me a huge favor, guys, hit that subscribe button, turn those notifications on for more behavior analysis.
I meant to hit you, and I did not do this thing with the door. No, God, no, I
Put punching on the edge of the jaw.
didn't. Okay, I'm sorry.
So on the tape, you tell Johnny Depp that you did mean to hit him.
Objection, that's argumentative and it misstates what the recording was.
And it also misrepresents what actually happened, which is him trying to get into a room I'm trying to keep him out of. And then he runs the door over my toes, trying to get into the room. I try to push him out of it, which is what the hit is referred to. And Johnny, whenever he was injured or touched, it always referred to it in these ways of punching or clocked or whatever. And whether you discussed it with him or not, the last thing you do in talking to him afterwards or trying to reconcile with him is to get into what the definition of those words mean to him.
Just say what
So
happened.
I never even addressed it. He would, if he was ever pushed, it was a cold. He called it a cold clock. I mean, it was just very dramatic.
She's eating, first of all. And it's very rare that we eat when we're highly stressed. Notice how when you're stressed or highly anxious, you don't really have much of an appetite, but she's sitting here, looks pretty comfortable. She's eating as she's listening to this recording, and we see that smirk with this rolling eyes like, oh, this old thing. Remember, I've said this in previous videos, when we roll our eyes, it's a familiar irritation. It's like, oh, here we go again. So she's got this eye rolling with the smirk, and to me, the big thing that I'm thinking in that beginning is, this is not someone who's in a state of fear. Now, this could be simply that she's a confident woman, so she doesn't let the stress or the fear affect her, and she's trying to stay composed. Very possible, but this is just inconsistent with what you would expect to see from someone talking about this kind of thing. You would expect to see more sort of fear, especially when she's listening to that recording, revisiting this traumatic thing. She's smirking, eyes are rolling. She talks about hit, and she does finger quotes. She goes, you know, that's the hit that was being referred to. That doesn't require finger quotes. You did say the word hit.
I meant to hit you.
So this eye rolling, this smirking, this hit, she's trying to minimize that confession that they have recorded. When she talks about Johnny Depp, we're seeing familiar irritation. You know the way you talk about someone you know for a very long time, oh, this is just the way they are, and she's got that smirking. She's scanning the room, and this time it's not those random look-arounds like this. She's looking at specific people as she's like, this is how Johnny is. You have to understand this is how he is. Because she knows he's got a lot of people on his side, and so she's sending this message to as many people as she can.
Yes or no, did you ever punch Johnny Depp with a closed fist in the history of your relationship with Johnny?
Answer it however you feel you wish to.
Thank you. One time, Johnny was hitting me, and he was hitting me hard and repeatedly, and I was screaming. Security walks in, and they don't do anything about it. And he makes this motion when Jerry Judge yells boss, or Sean, I can't remember who it was.
She is once again looking at the people in the room, really focused on making sure she's selling the story right. Her illustrator this time is off. When she says he made this gesture, and then she's using this gesture to really sell this story to the people. Then she gets surprisingly over specific about, you know, when Jerry yells, I don't know if she says boss or whatever she says, or maybe it was Sean, I don't know. That's not important to this story. Typically, we pay a lot of attention to where the specifics are coming in. When someone is giving you a truthful story, they give you a lot of specifics about the important event, not the things surrounding it. People who are being deceptive will try to give you a lot of details about the things surrounding it to come off as more honest. So I think that whatever's happening here is at the very least her giving this big exaggerated thing to defend herself. To be clear, it's entirely possible that that actually happened, but it's important for her to present it in a certain narrative. I always say truth tellers tell, liars sell. And there's a lot of selling going on here. But remember what I said earlier, people who are telling the truth but are scared of not being believed will often do these things as well. So I can't tell you that she's lying, but it's very important for her to present this version of the narrative.
He was about to push my sister down the stairs. She was attempting to break us up. I am protective over my baby sister. When he laid hands on her, I don't know what I did, but I know I jumped in between the actions that I saw could lead to a fatal injury to my sister. She was standing on the top of a flight of the stairs, and she has never hurt anyone in her life, and she does not deserve to be pushed down the flight of stairs. And it looked like she was about to be. And I would have done what anybody who has a child or a sister would have done.
We're seeing some of what we're supposed to see, and we're not seeing some of what we're supposed to see. So there's a protectiveness here and a narrative where she's trying to get people to sympathize with her situation by making this about protecting her baby sister. That's two words, baby and sister. She is trying to evoke in people their sibling instincts and their maternal instincts by saying, my baby sister. So I would have done what anyone would do. And as she's looking around the room, she's going, all of us would have done this. You must sympathize with me because you would have all done this. And we're seeing her spit these words. And on one or two occasions, we're seeing her voice crack as she comes back and those lips sort of do that thing. We're also seeing her, she's forward, she's lunging. This is the most forward she's been. She's almost like going over the table. So there's a lot of this that I believe she is actually feeling real rage towards this. But here's the thing. You can ask me right now, hypothetically, what I would do if someone tried to harm someone I care about, my sister, my girlfriend, and you will see this kind of rage in me. As I channel that and I go, oh, I would destroy them. You have no idea. What any one of you would do, I would do the same thing. This, especially for an actress, is one of the easiest things to evoke. To imagine someone harming their sibling and channeling all these emotions. So it's near impossible to know if this is something that she actually experienced in that moment. I'm not seeing enough recall to that moment to guarantee that she's re-experiencing it, versus is this just something she's channeling by imagining her sister being in trouble and really bringing out those emotions? Let me know in the comments, what is your intuition telling you? Are we seeing a real recall of a real stress here, or someone just channeling the capacity to feel that stress? Little side note also about this, we are seeing a lot of eye flutters throughout that. And eye flutter is when we're having a hard time processing information. It also happens in pre-aggression. Like when we're about to get aggressive, we kind of eye flutter, you didn't, and again, it's because, you did not just say what I thought you did. So we're processing this sort of thought that's getting us aggressive. Again, that could contribute to either side. Either she's struggling to process what happened, or she's struggling to process how she's going to say this. You could see eye flutters in both of those scenarios.
Are you finished? I want to make sure if you're finished or not.
Yeah.
Okay. Did the bottle you refer to, did it ever touch your body?
No.
Did the wine glass you refer to, in reference to the bottle, ever touch your body?
Pieces of it did. It shattered.
Okay. Where did the pieces you say touched your body touch your body? What part of your body?
I don't remember exactly what part of my body was touched by the glass breaking upon impact. I do know that it touched my body, knees and hands. No, not my hands, my knees anyway. When I went down to the floor, some version of my legs, when I went down to the floor later in the fight, but nothing significant, not like Australia or anything.
Okay, I said I was going to stay impartial on this, and I will on the entirety of the case as to who's being deceptive, who's being honest. That's deception. Sorry, that's just straight up deception. Let's look at why I say that. I'm not even going to go into the details of the body language, but there's so many clues even on the surface. First of all, think of any injury you've ever had, anything you've ever injured yourself. Our deepest instinct is to survive. So when we have an injury, we remember exactly where we took that damage. It is close to impossible that you can live a scenario where something shatters, you remember getting hit, but you don't remember where you got hit. How does that make sense? If you remember that you got hit, you must remember where it was. Otherwise, you can't remember being hit. Then she says, my hands and my knees, well, actually not my hands. How is it possible to misremember that? If you cut your hands, you would definitely remember that. So I think what this is it's her trying to sell or dramatize this, then suddenly remembering that there's probably evidence that her hands were never cut, so immediately withdrawing that. Then some version of my legs, I can't even. But another thing that we're seeing here is her trying to shift the focus to what is important for her narrative. So as she's telling the story, she reiterates and very articulately the glass breaking upon impact.
I don't remember exactly what part of my body was touched by the glass breaking upon impact.
She really wants people to understand that he violently threw this bottle at this glass, because she knows that she may not have gotten that injured, but still the glass shattered. It broke upon impact. And then at the end, we get this little jab where she goes, it was nothing that bad, nothing like Australia, because Australia was really, really bad. So she's shifting the focus to what does make him seem violent and bad, as opposed to talking about this incident, which probably wasn't really that bad in terms of the injuries that she sustained. I also know you guys are gonna have a ball in the comments about that expression she had right in the beginning when the lawyer asked, are you done? I just wanna make sure that you're done. A picture is worth 1,000 words. That little clip is worth 1,000,000 words. I can't wait to see what you guys think of that expression in the comments. Let me know. Now let's move on to Captain Jack Sparrow himself, Johnny Depp, and some really interesting stuff from his deposition. Much less, but very significant.
She threw a vodka bottle at me, and my hand was resting on the marble of the bar like that. And the first bottle went just past my ear. And the second one was a larger bottle, and she threw it from about this distance. And it smashed into the bar, which, and this finger, who I now call Little Richard, was the tip of the finger was severed, and all the bone in here was completely shattered. I mean, it looked like Vesuvius. And then I got infections. I ended up with MRSA twice, so it was very complicated. I was trying to just get the finger back, you know, and deal with the insanity of having had my finger chopped off by this woman that I was married to.
Let's talk about the concept of hesitation, because hesitation can both be an indicator of truth and an indicator of deception, depending on the circumstance and when in the answer it presents itself. So, hesitation is not normal if you're asking me a direct question to which I should know the answer. If you ask me where I live, what I do for a living, what my mother's name is, you know, obviously it takes a second to register the question, but there should be a direct answer to a question like that. Yes or no questions. When it comes to telling a story, especially an emotional one, hesitation is very normal because you're thinking, you're trying to remember, especially when we have this downwards energy because we're trying to recall. So a bit of hesitation here and there is perfectly normal. Also, when hesitation comes in the middle of the story, it's very normal. You're trying to remember bits and pieces, and then this happened, and then and then I think this happened. So you're trying to recall it. Hesitation before, like this big pause before an answer, that is an indicator of deception because you're planning and rehearsing and strategizing your story and checking in with former lies you told to see if what you're about to say makes sense. So here we're seeing Johnny Depp telling this story, and there's a couple of things that are interesting about this. First of all, we're seeing quite a few smirks and some jokes, and he laughs at his jokes, or he says things, you know, like some metaphors, like it was like Vesuvius, and you know, and he smirks at his jokes. And this is just the habit of a charming storyteller. He is a professional storyteller. He's an actor. And look at the movies that he's in. Very fantasy, very, you know, story-driven. He knows how to present something to charm someone, to connect with someone. We're also, you know, he's giving, the bottle went right past my ear. He's really building a very vivid image because he knows how to do that. He's also experiencing emotion as he talks about this because we have that sort of hesitation as he's thinking about it and he's recalling it. And remember, again, the eyes are going downwards as he's remembering. His pacing is slow as he's recalling. And every now and then he looks up to get a piece of information as he keeps going. It's choppy, it's messy. It has a very honest feel to it. But this comes with a giant, giant warning. We're looking at one of the most accomplished actors in the world. Now, I covered the whole Will Smith, Chris Rock thing, and I did say numerous times that there are certain things that even a trained actor cannot fake or hide in moments of real emotion. This isn't one of them. Telling the story in an emotional, believable way is something that an actor can do easily. So am I saying that this is entirely truthful? I'm not. I'm just saying it looks entirely truthful.
Amber, apparently created some story about you punching a wall or something like that?
She says that I did it myself, yeah. By punching a wall.
Just another way to hurt you.
I'd say, I'd like to see reactions from scientists. I mean, and physicians who are familiar with kind of, this sort of trauma, this sort of thing, because I'd love to see her explain how someone hits a wall, and if they put their fist through it, that means that it's drywall.
Yeah, hi. Yeah, is this MIT? Yeah. Do you guys have a wall punching scientist that I can talk to? Oh, it's not? Okay, thanks. Yeah, it turns out that's not a thing. So this is a really, really interesting answer because there is a giant cluster of deception. Always remember the way we know that there's a high likelihood of deception is we see a lot of deceptive behaviors happening at the same time, and there is certainly a ton here. First, he's smirking at the question. There's that sort of condescending smirk at the question. Not necessarily a sign of deception, just a sign of like condescension. But then we have the hand goes to the forehead, so face touching, one of the most researched signs of deception. So hand goes to the forehead, then it passes through his hair. It's called grooming. It's where we sort of make ourselves more presentable. So we have that. Then we have an enormous amount of not only face touching, but mouth covering. The hand comes up like this. Now, when we're kids and we say something we're not supposed to say, our hands come up like this and block. As we become teenagers, we become a little bit better at it as we do this kind of thing. And as adults, we're a lot more subtle about it. But we're seeing a lot of mouth covering. Finger comes up like this. Notice also, it's not an open palm touch like this. The fingers are coming in, digital flexion, signs of nervousness, signs of stress. As he comes up here, goes down, comes back up. So there's a lot of face touching. We see two separate eyebrow flashes where the eyebrows go up, and this is when we seek approval. And it's pretty clear that in the way he's presenting this, he's seeking the approval of the people that he's saying this to. Like, it's not possible. It's not possible to do this to your finger by punching a wall. So what is this deceptive? Is this, because I mean, it looks deceptive. Let me tell you exactly what I think. I believe that he 100% punched a wall. I don't believe that's how he hurt his finger. So he's putting the focus really on the fact that punching a wall could not have done this. You know, I would love to speak to scientists or physicians. Then he says, I'd love to see her explain how I could have broken my finger or damaged my finger by punching this wall. So he is denying breaking or damaging his finger by punching the wall. But we're seeing these deceptive tells because I think he 100% did punch a wall. It's just not how he damaged his finger. So there it was, guys. That was the analysis of the depositions. And I think there was a lot of really interesting stuff there. And at the end of the day, I can't tell you without evidence, especially in a case like this, who is for sure being abusive and who is for sure being abused. I think we're looking at two people who do have signs of honest emotion, but they're also both actors who can very much present emotion, especially emotion like this, effectively. So, but despite that, there are signs that we're seeing that some of this is being exaggerated. Anyways, the trial is going to be going on for several weeks at least. We're going to get a lot more testimonials from both of them. Let me know in the comments if ever there's a specific part you guys see that you want covered. I'm probably going to be doing a follow-up video on this. Hope you guys enjoyed this one. I will see you on the next one.